Right now, global trade routes are frozen. You're seeing it at the gas pump, you're dealing with supply chain delays, and you are definitely seeing it in the terrifying daily headlines about the 2026 Iran war. Standard media coverage often relies on an exhausted explanation that the Middle East is naturally violent, locked in an ancient religious feud. But the region actually operates as a deeply complex, interconnected geopolitical system. In 2026, multiple distinct wires in that machine are short-circuiting at the exact same time. To understand why this is happening now, we have to look at the top of the geopolitical food chain. For decades, the United States acted as the primary enforcer in the region. By 2026, Washington officially stepped back from that role. Beijing immediately stepped in to broker major regional trade deals, while Moscow heavily reinforced its naval presence in the Mediterranean. The old world order has been replaced by a multipolar powder keg. There are simply too many massive global powers competing for influence in the same tight space. When global superpowers shift their weight, the ground cracks underneath them. Without a clear global referee, regional leaders immediately scramble to secure their borders and grab whatever control they can. That panic triggered a massive regional escalation. The long-simmering covert conflict between Tehran and Jerusalem, the Shadow War, finally boiled over into open military strikes. When modern regional powers feel threatened, they rarely send their own armies across borders. Instead, they fund non-state groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis to fight on someone else's soil. Proxy strategies target the absolute arteries of global trade, specifically the Strait of Hormuz. In early 2026, this critical route experienced a de facto closure. The waters became too dangerous for transit, a highly calculated move designed to weaponize the world's reliance on oil. The disruption sent global markets into a tailspin. Trillions of dollars of complex refining infrastructure suddenly sat idle, starved of the crude oil they require to operate. This reveals the true utility of proxy warfare. It is a highly effective mechanism to hold the global economy hostage without ever signing a formal declaration of war. These proxy wars take root inside failing states, places like Lebanon and Syria, where the central government has entirely collapsed into rubble. The fragility of these nations traces back to 1916 with the Sykes-Picot Agreement. European powers divided up the Middle East with a ruler and a pen. They drew rigid, straight lines across the map, completely ignoring centuries of deeply rooted ethnic and religious realities. Forcing hostile factions to share an artificial national identity eventually causes the state to shatter. In this identity vacuum, people realize the government cannot protect them, and they retreat to tribal or religious loyalties for physical security. This geographical fracturing creates the perfect breeding ground. Extremist proxy groups easily step into these local power vacuums, offering money and protection to desperate civilians. While oil dictates the global economy, the people living in this terrain are fighting over a much more basic requirement: fresh water. Severe droughts are accelerating across the region. Water scarcity is the new oil, driving intense competition at the local level. Upstream nations are actively weaponizing this scarcity. They use massive dams to physically throttle the flow of vital rivers like the Tigris and the Euphrates, cutting off downstream communities. Restricting water flow creates an environment of absolute desperation. It forces local groups to fight for territorial control of water sources just to keep their families alive. At the ground level, the 2026 war is a terrifying daily struggle for biological necessity. This crisis is an interconnected chain reaction. Shifting global power emboldens regional powers to move. They exploit broken borders to fund proxy armies, choking global oil supplies for leverage. Ultimately, this system crushes local populations, plunging them into battles over survival and water. The 2026 crisis is a multi-layered systemic collapse of history, resources, and global ambition. A single peace treaty cannot solve a cascading failure of this magnitude. With the old world order gone and the borders of 1916 breaking, can diplomacy still work? Or are we watching a permanent redrawing of the map? Let me know what you think down in the comments.